It's the sound of ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Jenny Hamill. Thanks so much for joining us today. The first pope from the United States will preside over a mass of inauguration this Sunday in St. Peter's Square, where he will be enthroned as the leader of the Catholic Church. Last week, cardinals chose the Chicago-born Robert Prevost to succeed Pope Francis, who died last month. Prevost took the papal name Leo XIV. World and religious leaders and the public will gather for the ceremony, which is the formal beginning of his papacy. Pope Leo is also the first Augustinian pope and the former leader of the Order of St. Augustine, and spent much of his life abroad as a missionary, mainly in Peru. He is considered an ally of Pope Francis and has butted heads with the Trump administration in the past, chiefly over its handling of immigrants. In his first remarks to the crowds, Pope Leo called for a church that is, quote, always looking for peace, charity, and being close to people, especially those who are suffering. So joining me this morning to discuss the 267th Bishop of Rome, we have Dr. Carrie Dabney, Assistant Professor of Theology at Walsh University, which is a private Catholic university located in North Canton. Carrie, it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. And we have Sister Marian Durkin with the Sisters of Charity of St. Augustine. Sister, great to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Good to have both of you. And if you want to join in on the conversation, do you have a reaction to Pope Leo and what he means for the Catholic Church? Give us a ring. It is 866-578-0903. You can email us at soi@ideastream.org. You can tweet us. We're at Sound of Ideas. All right. So, Dr. Dabney, were you surprised that a pope from the United States was selected by the conclave?
I have to be honest, I was 100% shocked when it was someone from the United States. Just as someone who has studied the history of the church, particularly in its modern period, I never thought we would have someone who was from the United States, simply because of the concern about the geopolitical power of having someone from the United States in the Vatican, with the United States, its position in the world. So it's very interesting of the choice.
What do you think it means for American Catholics?
Well, I think that for American Catholics, I mean, I can speak personally, even just watching the small audiences that he's had thus far, to hear someone speak in clear English with a, South Chicago accent that I can clearly understand, it brings a smirk to my face, simply because I feel like I'm part of it. Being an American Catholic. So it is exciting.
I'm going to ask the same of you, Sister Marian. What was your reaction when you realized it was Pope Leo on the balcony of the Vatican for the first time?
Thank you. First of all, I didn't have the same exact reaction. I don't think I was shocked.
Okay.
I think it took me a while to realize we're talking about an American here. So for me, it was a little slower in coming. But the fact that he took Leo as his name is extremely significant. And I know that's been vetted pretty well, but I'd like to say it again. He took his name because Leo the 13th was a very, very vital part of the church history. Leo the 13th wrote a foundational text in our Catholic social teaching called Rerum Novarum, and that addressed all the social issues, especially issues around the working man and the working person and dignity of the workers. So I believe that Leo was extremely careful and thoughtful when he took Leo the 14th as his name, as a bow to Leo the 13th and everything that Leo the 13th taught the church.
On that note, Pat in Concord wrote in and said, I have read Rerum Novarum and other economic justice encyclicals. Am I saying that right? All right. This is what Leo the 14th is all about. economic justice. The U.S. bishops wrote Economic Justice for All in the late 1980s in response to the aversion to paying taxes by so many in the political sphere. Here's a quote. Pat writes, quote, "The poor have the single most urgent claim on the conscience of the nation. We are so far from that reality currently," she says, "it should shame all of us." So do you think with that kind of focus, and you yourself referenced Rerum Novarum, that maybe it's an indicator of how this Pope is going to move forward when it comes to the poor and the more marginalized?
Yes, I do. I do really believe that he respected what Francis started. And what got me excited was in his opening comments from the balcony, he used the word synodality. Now, for those of us who are Catholic, that word brings back Francis to us because Francis started synodality while he was the pontiff. And that means the gathering of people all over, if you will, all over the world, came to Rome for 2 years to talk to one another, to raise issues with each other. So synodality was something that personally I hoped that Leo would continue. And when he used the word in his opening comments from the balcony, that was extremely meaningful to me. That signaled to me that, yes, I do believe that he will, to a certain degree, continue what Francis started in the church.
All right, so Professor Dabney, I'd love to hear what you think, especially with Pope Leo being an ally of Pope Francis. What do you expect to see from him as leader of the Catholic Church, and maybe a direction it might be going in?
Well, there's a couple things. Obviously, just like Sister said, I think that he will continue Pope Francis's vision and mission towards a inclination towards those who are marginalized, inclination and sensitivity to those who are oppressed and poor, not only economically, but in all aspects of life. But I also think that Pope Leo XIV, they're small things. For example, when he did step out for the first time, if anyone who's Catholic will notice that when Pope Francis stepped out, he didn't have on the same vestments that traditionally were worn by those who stepped out for the first time. Pope Leo XIV did. So, and he's clearly spoken openly about certain moral aspects, such as gender ideology. I guess you want to say he has more of a conservative stance on some issues, but at the same time, what people would label as progressive with the poor, right? So to me, I am seeing a pontiff that is going to be a unifying figure with the church, take the conservative element of the church as well as the progressive element of the church, and we're going to come together, as opposed to really over the past decade, it was kind of polarizing. It kind of mirrored what we're seeing politically is what was happening in the church. And so I think that Pope Leo XIV is going to be able to bring those together. I'll mention this too, and I don't know if you probably had a question about this later because we talked about it, but I think it's a good time to bring it up now. And that is when you look at Pope Leo XIV, his heritage and his culture in itself brings people together, right? Because he obviously is a Peruvian American, but also if you look back in his background, he has some Haitian roots, some Creole roots on his maternal side. So you have all the different pockets, all the different demographics within the tradition, the Catholic tradition, all feel like they can claim a piece, right, of Pope Leo XIV. So I'm excited to see what is coming forward.
All right, we want our listeners, are you Catholic? Do you have a response to the naming of the new pope and who's going to be enthroned over the weekend? Give us a ring, 866-578-0903. Email us at soi@ideastream.org. And of course, that call out is for all listeners, Catholic or not, to participate in today's conversation. So, Sister, do you have any idea what Leo and Francis's relationship might have been like? It does seem that Pope Francis called him to Rome at some point, and I don't know, was there an indication that maybe he was a favorite of the Pope's?
Well, I know that the Pope invited him to Rome to be part of his dicastery, which is the ruling portions of the church. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, there's no proof that I'm aware of, But certainly in his role, he would have had very close contact with Francis. And I think because, as was said, I think he's a bridge builder, and so I think they became close. And I've smiled since, in that I've said to myself, I think Francis is enjoying the fact that Leo was made the next Holy Father, because he made him a cardinal just 2 years ago. So I think Francis had his eye on him, but knew that he would not, obviously he was not going to have a role. You don't know how much impact he had with the cardinals. We won't know that. But I do believe they were close. I believe that Francis liked Robert a lot and thought that he would follow in his footsteps well. So that's...
Okay, and let's talk about the fact, because this is obviously significant, and significant for you, sister, the fact that Pope Leo is of the Augustinian order and was the head of the Order of St. Augustine worldwide for years. Can you tell us a little bit more about the implications of that, what that means?
Sure. Well, we were excited because we're Sisters of Charity of St. Augustine, and the link between, if you will, between Pope Leo and us is that rule of Augustine. Of course, Augustine rule was around way back in the 300s, but he established a rule that would be used by women religious and men religious. And so the Augustinian community, to which Leo belongs, followed the rule of St. Augustine. So that's the link. But if Augustine is part of their heritage and he's their patron, what a great doctor of the church. Augustine is honored for his work in the church. So I think it's significant that he's an Augustinian. That's a very large community. What's interesting about the Augustinians is that missionary work is one of their key facets in their community. And I think perhaps that's why Robert, at that time, when he was at Villanova, became an Augustinian, because he was attracted to the missionary work, obviously, because he went to Peru almost immediately after his ordination, I believe, and was in Peru for many years. So that Augustinian missionary spirit, I think, imbues him, and he will always have that wide openness to the Church Universal, because he's had so much opportunity to serve in the missions, and what a great peace that he brings to the papacy. Yes.
And in fact, didn't he, was it he or Francis, I'm now mixing up the two, who said this will be a missionary church?
Well, I think Francis used that language.
Yeah, okay. It was
I mean, a couple times. So interestingly enough, that's a link between them as well. That missionary spirit, and that, I think for Leo, it's just that he has this broad, wide sense of church. He speaks many languages. Again, something that's very attractive, was attractive, I think, to the cardinals. And as someone said, as he was being talked about, he kind of checked all the boxes that the cardinals were looking at. His worldwide experience, his language, the languages that he was able to speak, and just his attitude that we've talked about today toward the poor, and his link to Leo XIII. Those were all, I think, important points that's why I think the cardinals made the decision so quickly.
That's a great point. John wrote in and said, I know everyone is thrilled that Pope Leo was born in Chicago. However, let's not lose sight of the fact that he was a naturalized Peruvian citizen at the time he became Pope. An important fact to keep in mind. And I think there's something about that. It speaks to the fact that Robert Prevost had an element, like you were saying, Professor Dabney, that is accessible to lots of different members of the Catholic community, whether it's his Haitian and Creole ancestry, even if it's minute. It's something that people can claim and identify with. The Peruvians can identify with him. Americans, obviously. Everyone's talking about whether he liked deep dish pizza or not. And there's viral video. He was at a World Series, right? Was he at a World Series?
He's a White Sox fan.
Right, right.
Eating hot dogs.
I mean, that. How much more relatable can you be as a Pope?
Right.
You're eating a dog and watching baseball.
Right.
So in that respect, I think when you're talking about the future of the Catholic Church and its relevance, because I know there's a lot of conversations had about that, and I think that felt like a foundational piece of the tension that bore out between Pope Francis and the conservative members of the Church was trying to keep the Church something that is attractive to potential new members and keeps its relevancy in modern day society. How do you think that the Church is seeing its own future in Pope Leo and just kind of more broadly?
Well, first thing, I feel obligated to say, as most Catholics, if not all Catholics, believe, this is all done under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. So I don't want the language to think that we're strategizing. We picked Pope Leo the 14th so that we seem more attractive to members of the West, right? I mean, there is we stand 10 toes down, so to speak, and believe this is under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. So I'll say that I believe that God has assisted and guided the selection of Pope Leo the 14th for a couple of reasons. First, yes, if you look statistically, where is the church growing? It's growing in continents of Africa, right, in South America. If we look at North America, we look at the West, statistically the numbers may appear to be declining. But then again, having Pope Leo the 14th, because of the geopolitical positioning, I see it as a balance. And again, I'm just looking at it, backing up from an academic perspective, and looking at the history. So I'm excited about it. I think I want to go back to something the sister brought up, and that is, this is a really exciting time to be part of the Catholic tradition. You know, Pope Francis was the first Jesuit to be the pontiff, and now we have the first Augustinian. So again, I say this very bluntly. I think the Holy Spirit is guiding us into new territory, into new ideas, into new, not new in the sense of away from tradition, but a way for us to look through different lenses for the same goal.
But I like your point that, you know, despite how all maybe the pundits and people like me talk about what does this mean and all of that, you say this is kind of, it's guided by the Holy Hand. So ultimately, but maybe God's getting more modern too.
Well, I'll definitely say for someone like me who's in the classroom, it does provide great material.
Yeah, sure.
To rejuvenize and renew the interest. One of the, and I hope I can say this on the stream, but one of the things I say all the time to my students is some of the sexiest material that we'll hear is, the history of the church, right? And so I think that this is a more, it's providing more fodder, more material that I think are going to get people to lean in and hear more.
Let me ask you another kind of identity question, Sister Marian. Pope Francis really leaned into women taking kind of that expanded role in church leadership. Perceptions that Pope Leo may be a bit more conservative. What is your sense of that aspect of his leadership?
Yes, you're right about Francis. He did expand the roles. Of course, there was a lot of disappointment after the synod, especially, that he didn't, for example, give power or give the okay to women deacons, which was something that they thought would come out of the synod. However, I'd like to think that Leo, one of the things about him that they say about him is that he's a profound listener. So I'm hoping if he continues with the synodality, that he will listen carefully. I'd like to think that attention to the gay lesbian part of our church, and women in the church, which were two issues that surfaced during the synod that did not get the attention that we had hoped. So yes, my hope is that that's something that Leo will listen to again very carefully, because I believe both of those continue to we need to move forward. And I do believe he's going to be someone who moves us forward in the church.
Professor Dabney, you made this point about kind of the history of the church. I wonder, when you do think of the way media and social media and all the coverage of the church and the Pope, and you can get kind of what seems to feel like an intimate view of the process with the conclave and then ultimately in the naming of the Pope. Do you think that's a good thing for the Catholic Church to make it seem less shrouded and mysterious for those who may not be as intimately involved with the church? To make it more accessible?
Yeah, there's two ways I'll answer that question.
Sure.
Obviously, anytime layers of the curtain can be moved away, it is a good thing for the church, right? So more transparency is good. However, at the same time, I do want to put this caution out there. There was so much media out there. There's a lot of media out there that skews what takes place because it's trying to produce a certain agenda, right? So I always say just be careful of what you are consuming. For example, the movie that came out, Conclave. In its entertainment value, I found it very interesting, but it's not a genuine depiction of what happens in the conclave, right? So you have to be careful. Media's good, but just be able to make sure you're vetting what you're looking at. If that makes any sense.
Sure. The Cardinal's not vaping in the corner of the room.
Is that right?
Who knows, right? Okay, so I just want to hit on this one more time because I know it's important to you. But as a Black man, a Black Catholic, and I know that you have been kind of instrumental in a partnership with your university and Xavier University and HBCU. Again, the significance of someone who even claims some ancestry that's Haitian or Creole. What does that mean for the Black Catholic community?
So historically, the Black Catholic community it's been questioned of whether or not you can be authentically Black and authentically Catholic, right? So there's an entire history, there's an entire heritage of Black Catholic spirituality, of Black Catholic development and contributions that we've made to the tradition. Having Pope Leo XIV having any type of connection to the Black Catholic community is significant because we feel like it's a way we can be seen. So, for example, a place like Xavier University, which has an institute called the Institute of Black Catholic Studies, which takes place, and specifically its intention is to raise awareness, and they work towards having a degreed program that has, founded or rooted in African American history, African American Catholic history, African American Catholic spirituality. Is significant, right? Mm-hmm. Because now we have a pontiff, particularly if his family was Creole and was in the New Orleans area at some point, even if it's just a small fraction of his history, it's significant. Because for the African American community in general, identity has always been important, right? That we're not a subtitle to American history, but we're a part of American history. And it's the same thing in the Catholic faith.
All right, you have about 30 seconds for this answer, sister. But, we mentioned that the Pope historically or previously had butted heads with the Trump administration over some policies. Do you think now that he is Pope, he might be less or more political?
I think he'll probably be very cautious about that because he has to serve the world. He's not there to serve our country. So I think he'll be very cautious, but I think if there are things that the administration is doing that he definitely opposes, he will speak. He will speak to that. But again, I would be surprised if he wasn't just a little cautious about how he does that. Only because I don't think he wants to be perceived as favoring or only addressing issues that are in our country. There are issues, of course, all over the world that he's going to have to carry, and it's such a big job. But so that's my answer. I think a cautiousness will be there.
Sister Marian Durkin with the Sisters of Charity, and Dr. Carrie Dabney with Walsh University. A pleasure to speak with both of you. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to take a break. And we come back, we're going to talk about something super exciting, chores. Kids aren't doing them as much as they used to. Do you give your children chores, or are they too swamped with homework and after-school activities? We want to hear your thoughts. We want to get some advice. You can call in 866-578-0903. Send an email to soi@ideastream.org. This is The Sound of Ideas. I'm Jenny Hamill. We'll be right back. You're with The Sound of Ideas from IdeaStream Public Media. I'm Jenny Hamill. Thanks for being with us this hour. A quick note that there's less than a week until our next Sound of Ideas community tour, focused on the topic of prison reentry. We're going to discuss whether society really ever forgives those reentering society from prison and allows them the chance to reassimilate and work and thrive. This is part of the Cleveland Orchestra Humanities Festival, and it's going to be held next Tuesday night at the MLK Junior branch of the Cleveland Public Library. I want to see you there. My team wants to see you there. It's free and open to the public. You can register at ideastream.org/community tour. Hope to see you there. All right, back to the show. Doing the dishes, making your bed, cleaning your house. You know these tasks, but probably don't love all of them. Well, some people might, but they're called chores. And while many of us grew up helping around the house, these days many kids are getting out of doing chores. They're too busy, or so they say, but they might actually be, with sports and homework and other extracurriculars. But research suggests that chores are strong predictors of life success, and making sure your kids help out around the house is one of the best things you can do for them. Today, we're going to get a better understanding of why chores are important, what chores are appropriate for your kids, and how to get them to help around the house without a big battle. I want to know more about that. Joining me for the discussion, we have by phone Lori Sugarman Lee, a family coach and a mom of two who wrote a book titled Our Home, The Love, Work, and Heart of Family, written for kids about chores. Hi, Lori.
Good morning.
Good morning. We also have Dr. Kate Eschliman. She's a pediatric psychologist at the Cleveland Clinic. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We want to hear your thoughts on chores. How do you get kids to do them, or whether you don't? Call 866-578-0903. You can email us at soi@ideastream.org. You can tweet us. We're at Sound of Ideas. So, Dr. Eschliman, I wonder, why are chores so important for kids?
Yeah, chores are important because it shows them that not everything can be done for them. And it helps them learn responsibility even at an early age.
And how young do you think we should be starting with the chores?
Really, we can start as early as kids are mobile and participating in activities. And so for very young kids, when they have toys on the floor or you're reading books, helping put the toys away or the books back on the bookshelf is a great place to start.
All right. And Lori, I wonder for you as well, why are chores important?
So I think the opportunity for kids to understand that they have a chance to impact the wellness of their family. And I think really to understand the why behind all of this stuff that we do. A lot of families have a chore chart or a list of things that have to be done before the things that they want to do. But when kids understand, well, why are we actually doing all of this stuff, and understand that it has a benefit back to them, then they have a greater stake in it.
So there is so much in terms of household work that's done quietly and kind of out of sight. Do we do our children a disservice when we hide the work we do around the house, or not kind of point attention to it? Lori?
Well, this is such a big part of it, right? I mean, we know that women carry 75% of the load of the work of home and care, and that's just the executional part. To your point, there's a huge amount that is in the mental or the emotional that nobody else in the family sees. And then a lot of the executional stuff happens sort of silently and magically in the shadows, when children are at school, when children are asleep. And so, yes, the opportunity really is to do this work a little bit sort of more loudly and bring them into it so that they can, learn alongside.
All right. So, Dr. Eshelman, I know that you kind of iterated first off about how they're good for kids, household chores. But how would you go kind of a little bit deeper into how household chores affect a child's mental development? And maybe, I guess, even to broaden that out, is there any element of completion of task or structure that go along with chores that also help develop a child's mental capacity?
Sure. And I think you hit on some really important points, is that most people, including children, benefit from structure, routine, knowing what expectations are. And so having these expectations of the child and knowing, what the process of the afternoon or the evening is going to look like is very beneficial. I think to your point too, we all benefit from success. And again, that's children included. So when they feel like they have mastered something, they're learning a new skill, whether that's how to fold the laundry or organize the dishwasher in a certain way. Once we've learned a new skill and feel like we're mastering that, that's an opportunity to experience success and build self-confidence and learning how to help others, right? There's benefit of that too. I once worked with a nurse and she described chores as family contributions, which I think is just a great term, because we're really, helping out the family, and so that feels good as well.
Yeah, it was interesting. My almost 6-year-old the other day, we had him clean up some toys, and he told me I wasn't cleaning up any toys, and I was saying, well, I do everything else, and often clean up your toys when you aren't paying attention. So I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny because, there's this quality of, you're doing all the mom things, but they don't necessarily see that as added. It's just a part of what the parent does as opposed to this specific project. So I thought that was funny. Mm-hmm. All right. So I want to hear from folks out there. Did you do chores when you were a kid? Are you a grandparent or a parent who assigns chores now? How do you do it? Why do you think it's good for your kids? We'd love to hear from you. It's 866-578-0903. You can email us at soi@ideastream.org. You can tweet us. We are at Sound of Ideas. So, Lori, what kinds of chores did you do as a kid?
So, I actually did a ton of stuff around the house, and this is an important point for us to consider today, which is even in our own family unit, we understand how we move together through the world, but we are all, even in our unit, wired very differently. Mm-hmm. And I had a dad, looking back now, I can recognize, who was often challenged to complete big tasks. And he brought me into a lot of that work with him because I had the sort of skill and ability to keep him on track. And as I look back, so many of my most beautiful memories of time with my dad are of doing the work of home and care. And I felt empowered and I felt trusted, and it was really, really formative for me.
So tell me about your book, Our Home, and kind of what the ethos is behind the book's message, and if there's some sort of like practical tips and guidance you're trying to give.
So Our Home is about the power of families and how we care for one another and the space that we share. And it's meant to be a conversation starter for families about what are our values, what's important to us, how can we support each other in achieving a certain family wellness in our everyday. And it's for young children, but I like to say that, conceptually, it really can inspire families with older children as well, just to start these conversations about how do we want to live together? How do we want to support one another every day?
Yeah, so I have an almost 6-year-old, and then I have a 2.5-year-old. And so I'm kind of at that stage where I think with the 2.5-year-old, he's a little too young for chores. He's going through his tantrum phase. But certainly with my older boy, he loves doing outside stuff. He loves, I don't know, he loves picking mint. That's not really a chore, but he just loves anything that has to do with the yard and leaves and stuff like that and growing stuff. But when it comes to indoor chores, he's less interested. So I wonder, Dr. Eshelman, is there an aspect of getting kids to do stuff that they are naturally inclined to? How do you kind of set up a child for success, but maybe also, I don't know, demand that it happen, that you're the parent and here's a project I want you to do and you got to do it. Is there a balance?
There absolutely is. And I think, in part, especially when they're young, if you can make it fun, so singing a song or playing a game, and really even with children your age, engaging both of them, make it a race. How do we make it fun and engaging, is kind of a key when they're young. And then as they get a little bit older, I think a couple of points, Lori pointed out earlier, the statement that we have to do the things that we have to do before the things that we want to do. And so, over time it becomes important that in order to engage in our fun activities, we have to complete the tasks that are necessary as well. And I think, something you mentioned earlier also is as parents having appropriate expectations. So, expecting that the child is going to do the activities and enjoy doing them and get them done quickly may not be an appropriate expectation and lead us feeling frustrated, right? Just because we're asking them to do it and expect them to complete it doesn't mean they're going to do so happily or willingly.
Sure. All right. It's exciting to see our phone lines lighting up with people who want to participate in this conversation. So let's take a couple of calls. We've got Nicole in New Philadelphia on the line. Hi, Nicole. Give us your thought or question.
Yeah, so I have two kids. I have a 10 and 11-year-old, and I struggle with the chores. And I have, in particular, my 11-year-old son who's very strong-willed. And at one point, we had a list of what his chores was. And then when I give him extra things, or could you mind taking the trash out? He goes, that's not on my list. And it just seems like, a battle. And I'm wondering, because I do get frustrated sometimes with the battle, doing the chore appropriately, following up with the chore. Would it be such a bad thing not to give them chores?
All right, that's interesting. I mean, is there a point where you say, I raise the white flag and having a battle with my kid who doesn't want to do chores is just something that is too, I get it. You have only so much bandwidth as a parent in the day, and sometimes you're like, it's just easier. But I don't know. Should Nicole be putting her foot down and saying, you got to do these chores? Who wants to take that?
I'm happy to. So a few things. First of all, I want to acknowledge this work is a heavy load, and encouraging kids to build their muscle takes time. And what I really suggest for families is kind of a two-part thing. First of all, there's a real opportunity to reframe the work of home and care, and this was mentioned already, less as chores, less as a burden, and more as an expression of gratitude for all that we have. And the language that we use when we talk about this work and the energy as well is really, really important. And so I suggest families really lose the word help, because that implies that the work is mom's and that the kids are sort of waiting to be asked. And use more collaborative work. If the kids are struggling to engage, maybe do stuff with them. Body doubling is like a really powerful thing when kids are reluctant. Do stuff together. Use that as an opportunity for connection and bonding. And also really important to match them to things where they will be able to use their skills and succeed. It's not about pawning work off onto kids, and it's not about perfection. It's about watching them grow into a skill that will serve them later on in life. And please don't stop, because this will be so important, as they go off to college or live independently later, and then later as they become solid partners.
Yeah, thanks for that, Lori. And Dr. Eshelman, I wonder if you might add to that, because I'm with Nicole. Sometimes for me, the battle is so just draining, and you just don't have that much energy. But I also know I want to raise a productive little a little guy who's respectful and responsible and has some accountability. So what do you think from a psychologist's perspective about, laying down the hammer and kind of making kids do what you want them to do as opposed to just kind of throwing up the white flag.
Sure. And this is actually a pretty complex issue, right? Because there is this concept of choosing your battles. But at the same time, we don't want to teach kids that if they put up a fight, that then that results in escape from the undesired activity. And so, I think working to find, these contributions that can be helpful and meaningful. I think the other thing is to be flexible, right? And so, if the expectation is that a certain activity is completed every night, and then every night that becomes a battle, and we only have so much bandwidth to manage those battles. Maybe we look for like activities that could be done on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon, and so the child feels more rested, the parent feels more rested. They have a little bit more opportunity to really get into it. Whether that's completing the task or making sure that the task is completed on the parent part. And so having some flexibility around those expectations, I think, can be very helpful.
Again, the number if you want to chime in, 866-578-0903. Would love to hear from you. You can email us at soi@ideastream.org. Let's take a call from Helen in Shaker Heights. Hi, Helen. Give us your thought or question.
Hi. I really see the importance of making chores, without calling them chores, a fun activity. And we did this with our now grown girls. Set the timer for 5 minutes to do one task, like picking up toys. And it really was, I was there with them doing it. So it didn't end up feeling like a chore, but they got the work done. And as they aged, doing things like laundry, I would walk into their bedroom, clothes that had just been washed all over the floor. So I taught them how to do their own laundry. So in 6th grade, they were on their own with their laundry, making their lunches. And by the time our eldest daughter got to college, no one in her dorm knew how to do laundry. So it was really, it's something that carried on into their lives. The other concept we did is touch it once. So if you had dishes off the table, put it right into the dishwasher. And they're using that now as adults. Touch it once, Mom. So those things really did help with helping the house run a little bit better, so it wasn't all on me.
Love it. Thanks, Helen, for that perspective and for sharing that with us. Pat from East Cleveland, Dr. Pat wrote in and said, with toddlers, start by doing things with them. Helps to get things started. That's so true. And at 5 or 6, it helps to start the chore with them. So that sounds like some specific advice for me. And I'm working on it. And some days we get it done, and some days it's a little harder than others. Carrie wrote in and said, my brothers and I had to do chores every Saturday, vacuuming, mopping, cleaning bathrooms, which I hated as a kid, but as an adult, I appreciate. Unfortunately, I had a perfectionist mother who made me go back to redo my chores when they weren't up to her standard. And these days, I love a spotless house, but chores are a struggle. So I think Carrie's point, which is speaking to your Lori and Dr. Eshelman's point too, is the framing of the thing, making it not just a burden or a demand, how we even talk about it. What, is it a chore? Is it a task? Is it, at our house, I say things are projects, complete your project. And how we can make it fun and maybe desirable for our children to do. Let's take a call from Kelsey in Mansfield. Hi, Kelsey. Give us your thought or question.
Hi. I wanted to say that we, instead of phrasing it as chore list, we call it a responsibility list. And we print out lists that are dry erase for all of our family. So I have one, my husband has one, and then both of our kids do, who are almost 9 and 5. We don't look for perfection, but we do expect their best effort. And they have different chores based on the days. We also tie, if they finish their chores for the day, we tie that if whether or not they can have screen time. So we try to show that responsibilities come before fun. And if they do it for 5 days, then they earn an allowance.
Oh, I love all of that. And what do you got? What do we think about, Lori? I'll ask you this about lists because I know I do something quasi similar. It's a star sheet, and my oldest son, he got 100 stars. It took him many months, but he got a toy, and there's just a gamut of things that we ask him to do. Even listening the first time is on the star sheet. So, Lori, what do you think about kind of incentivizing in any sort of way, or keeping track, I guess? For kids.
Yeah. First of all, I want to say your callers are really on it, and I'm loving all these suggestions that they're giving. I think that motivation can be really important. Know your kids, know your family. And I think, even an allowance can be a great motivator. First of all, it's a fantastic tool for financial literacy, but before you connect the giving of money or the giving of toys to the work of home, it's really important to instill like a fundamental understanding that the contribution of this work is to the wellness of the family, and make sure that kids really understand that first before they are doing it for the money or the toy.
Dr. Eshelman?
Yeah, and I think to Lori's point, I think that the understanding is really valuable, and I think it's also important to remember that simply because kids understand doesn't mean they're going to be eager or motivated to do it. And every child is different. And so some kids are, they're people pleasers. They're going to do what's asked just because. And then for others, it does help to require or to add motivation to that, and that can come in many forms. And in order for it to be successful, it's important to understand what each child is motivated by.
Nancy wrote in and said, I used to use rewards working to find a trip to the video store or the park, but their chores had to be completed by a certain time. I also used to tell my kids, we all live in the house together, so we all have to take care of it together. I love that. She wrote, they're in their 40s now, and they do a very nice job of taking care of their homes. Mike McIntyre wrote in and said, my job was to empty the garbage and clean the bathroom. I used a Kleenex on the porcelain and thought I was done. On Friday, I asked for my $5 allowance, and my dad said, did you use the spick and span? I said I had, but I hadn't. He said, if you used the spick and span, you'd have your allowance. I went back to the bathroom and grabbed the box, which contained not just cleaning powder, but a rolled up $5 bill. I properly cleaned the bathroom from then on. That's
Brilliant.
That's a great story. Judy wrote in and said, I'm a mom of 4 grown children. They thank me for the fact that they had to do chores. They're happy they know how to really clean as well as do minor repairs around the house. I want to speak to that real quick, and then I want to take one more call. So I don't know. I guess for the long term, do we have data that is showing us that indeed some sort of structure and doing the work and the chores or whatever it is as a child really does kind of create the architecture for a responsible, striving adult, Dr. Eshelman?
It's a great question, and I actually can't cite any literature, but I think what we do know is that, in order to be kind of responsible and successful, we have to learn, or to be really anything, right? We have to learn and practice the skills. And so this is a great opportunity to do that, is to learn these skills. I think, the caller who commented on her daughter going to college and nobody knew how to do laundry. You have to learn at some point, whether it's when you're in 6th grade or a college freshman. So it gives a great opportunity to learn and practice the skills, to do so in a, hopefully a supported setting. It gives us a chance to model the behavior for others. And those are all things that are going to contribute to success as we move through life.
All right, we only have 3 minutes left, but I'm going to take Carolyn in Akron's call. Hi, Carolyn. Give us your thought or question, but if you'd kind of keep it concise.
Hi. I used to pay my kids to do chores. And after they were paid to do the chores, they were given the option to either spend it or deposit it in the bank, which I felt taught them, about money, about how to save. And they did opt to save. So I thought that was valuable.
Okay, Carolyn, I appreciate that. And that does bring it into an interesting point, whether you should be incentivizing with money or if there should be kind of an allowance relationship with chores. I wonder, Lori, what's your perspective on that?
So I think, again, know what motivates your kids. I think, again, money is a great tool for financial literacy. Very important to understand how to spend, how to save, later on, how to invest. But I would use that money for the sake of that financial literacy. And I would encourage kids to participate in the work of home because it is the work of nourishing and nurturing and adhering to community and municipal standards and protecting our investments and making sure they have that understanding first and as well.
Lori, I love that you said very casually community municipal standards as a part of the vernacular in talking about all of this. This has been such an interesting conversation. I think we could talk about it even more. I've learned a lot. I might go back and re-listen to this so I can get some more tips about how to raise my young boys. I want to thank Dr. Kate Eshelman of the Cleveland Clinic and life coach and author Lori Sugarman Lee, author of the book Home, Our Home, The Love, Work, and Heart of Family. I might have to pick that up. Thanks to both of you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.